We're going to take a bit of a circuitous route in today's video, but I promise we're getting to a point for the Kansas City Chiefs and this season, and please stick with me. Plus, if you are a history fan or like random tidbits and factoids, this will be for you. On your screen now is a man named Abraham Wald. Some of you will know exactly where this is going immediately. Abraham Wald was a statistician and engineer, maybe one or the other, but as I understand, both in World War II for the United States. And what he did really changed things to the benefit of the United States. So he was part of a team that were tasked with trying to get American bombers back in action. So what they did was they would bring in all of the bombers that made it back. So you send a bomber out, the bomber bombs, the bomber comes back, and you study it. And what they were doing was saying, okay, well, where was this bomber shot up? And normally, it was like right here, and right here, and right here, and right around here. They would be shot, well, it's on the bottom, but where they would be shot up. And so the engineers, in very engineer fashion, said, okay, well, that's where the planes take damage. We will make them stronger there. We will reinforce them with steel. We will do some things to make those parts less observable, things like that, right? Well, the problem is, A, this takes time. B, this takes resources. So and C, when you make the plane heavier, it takes more fuel to get it there and hopefully to get it back too. So they were doing this, and the rates at which they lost bombers never changed. They reinforced the wings, they reinforced the fuselage, they reinforced the tail, and when they came back at the same rate that they went out, or at the same rate that they were coming back before they had made those changes. So they'd make them stronger, which made them heavier, which made them more expensive, and it made them slower. And then they get back the same amount of bombers. What is going on here? Well, one day, this fella right here woke up and said, no, that doesn't make any sense. When we send these bombers out and we get them back, and the wings are shot up, and the fuselage is shot up, and the tail is shot up, those are the ones we got back. If this part of the plane is shot up, we lose the pilot. We don't get it back. If this part of the plane is shot up, it does not have propulsion. We don't get it back. We have been reinforcing the wrong areas of the plane. Instead of the wing, you reinforce here. Because when they shoot out the propellers, you don't get it back. That is very much in tune with what we're going to be talking about today. They took in the problem and gave the exact wrong solution. Great. Let's take a look at what's going on. And I do not do this, again, I do not do this to pick on anyone. I think that the guys at Arrowhead Pride do great work. I've talked about John Dixon's pieces. I've talked about stories written by John Dixon a lot on this channel. I appreciate his work, but I think right here he's taking the exact wrong answer. Upon further review, 3 thoughts about the Chiefs' loss to the Broncos. This is an article on Arrowhead Pride subtitled, With the Benefit of Hindsight, What Should We Think About Kansas City's Loss to Denver, from Arrowhead Pride by John Dixon. The number 1 point in this article. bringing back the deep passing game was ill-advised. I think right here what you're attempting to do is you're attempting to reinforce the wings. You're attempting to reinforce the fuselage. Even when Alex Smith was Kansas City's quarterback, head coach Andy Reid would often take a deep shot in the first few plays of the game. It rarely worked, but the idea was to get the defense committed to defending against it, which is very solid strategy, by the way, as long as you do threaten to go back to it later. In Sunday's game, Kansas City called 3 straight deep passes on its opening drive. All 3 fell incomplete, forcing the team to punt after just 4 plays. I'm not going to argue that that is not the greatest outcome. I'm not going to argue and say it was brilliant strategy. It just didn't work out. Now, something interesting to note about that, normally those first 12, 13 plays are scripted. If those first 12, 13 plays are scripted, do you really think that 3 consecutive of them were called to go deep? If you had connected on them, you would be on your 3rd drive by the time you got that 4th pass. Something tells me that this is part of Patrick Mahomes deciding, hey man, I'm going to go for it all. That's what I think is a little bit more at stake in this game. I don't know about the whole season, but in this game, I think that's what was going on there. I think that Patrick Mahomes was getting ultra aggressive and wanted to put things to bed early. That was well beyond putting a play in the opening script to keep the defense honest. In Sunday's game, quarterback Patrick Mahomes attempted 10 passes described as quote-unquote deep in the matchup's official record. Only 1 of them was completed. A 61-yard third-quarter strike to Tyquan Thornton that set up Kansas City's first touchdown. Another was intercepted, ending a drive that would have put at least 3 points on the board, and led to Denver's first touchdown. 2 more drew pass interference penalties that gained a total of 87 yards. 61, 87, that's 148 yards, 3 plays. Not bad. Sure isn't bad. 1's an interception. Okay. Mahomes' passer rating on these throws was a horrifying 12.9. You got 87 free yards. If they could be removed from his 29 completions on 45 attempts for 276 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, which gave him an ugly rating of 79.5, he would have ended up with an adequate 101.8 rating, and Kansas City probably would have left Denver with a victory. I will quibble with 2 things here. A 101.8 rating. Mahomes is on the record saying he doesn't care. I don't care. I hope that you don't care. A victory is a much more important and shiny stat. Mahomes' victory numbers are incredible and on historic pace, even with a 500 record through 10 games in the 2025 season. Probably would have left Denver with a victory. I don't know that. I don't know that if you're saying if he could have thrown incompletions, if they could have just been removed from his 29 completions. I think that is just a hypothetical argument on something that actually happened. If you were to say the Chiefs would have won if Chamari Connor would have come up with an interception in the 4th quarter. Okay, maybe. Anyway, I don't think that's really worth talking about in detail, but I think you understand where I'm going with it. Ever since general manager Brett Veach traded wide receiver Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins in 2022, hundreds of thousands of words have been written about whether or how the team could replace his production. To date, It hasn't happened. But here's what has happened. Kansas City appeared in 3 straight Super Bowls, winning two of them and becoming the only team in history to return after back-to-back wins. It's historic, right? Absolutely historic. What has been achieved here is absolutely historic. Why has no other team returned to the Super Bowl after winning back-to-backs? It does not get pretty for you after that. The Chiefs went back to another Super Bowl. It may be that this is the point where the other shoe is dropping. The other shoe doesn't have to drop for seasons at a time. If the other shoe is dropping by cosmic karma, by the fact that these players have played additional seasons of football in their career through stacking postseason games, the fact that maybe their bodies are just tired, the fact that you suddenly have a bloated payroll and that makes it difficult to do other things, by the fact that you do not get waiver wire additions because you were so far down on the claim wire, by the fact that you draft so late in each round, by the fact that, again, you don't have the money to pay those free agents, by the fact that you don't have a special spot in a middle-of-the-career free agent's book because he does not know if he can just come in and start. All of these things are working against the Chiefs, and they've been working against the Chiefs for the better part of a decade. If the Chiefs end this season in bad fashion, that sucks, but guys, it's on schedule. It's behind schedule. Right? So I think that part of this is just taking too much for granted. And look, we're spoiled. We just are. We just are. But again, here, great points by Dixon. He's not tearing the team down for any of this. He's saying, look, this is just what happens. And the Chiefs went to 3 consecutive Super Bowls anyway. It now seems the Chiefs cannot use their top wide receivers, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Hollywood Brown, to return to the aerial assault they had with Hill, wide receiver Sammy Watkins, and tight end Travis Kelce. As our Nate Christensen once again pointed out on Tuesday, none of them are built for the job. I think that this is too early to tell. I think that what you're doing here is looking at a guy who Tyreek Hill definitely had first-round Hall of Fame potential. I think he will be a Hall of Famer. I think it's very likely he's a Hall of Famer now. I think if he does return and play more football, he's a Hall of Famer. He just needs to stack a few more stats on there. And this is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So you were looking at, with that team, 2 very good Hall of Fame players in their prime. Yeah, it's difficult to get back to that place. And then Sammy Watkins, who was a legitimate 1.5 wide receiver. Like, he could have been a number 1 physically, but he was a really good number 2. So he could have, some offenses he probably could have pulled off the number 1 job. So it's incredibly frustrating that Kansas City has used its resources on receivers with redundant skill sets. I'm sorry, what? With redundant skill sets? Tell me how Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy have redundant skill sets. They do not. Tell me how Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown have redundant skill sets. They do not. Here's one thing I will grant you. What am I doing here? Here's one thing I will grant you. Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Tyquan Thornton overlap a little bit. But pay attention to the NFL, because that's kind of the way that things are moving. Why are things moving that way? Well, just in the same way that we had just in the same way that we introduced this video, sometimes it's possible to take the wrong answer from the right lesson. For so long, everybody said, well, you want a fast wide receiver, and you want a big wide receiver, and you want a guy who can run really good routes. You want a diverse cast of wide receivers. You want guys that have different skills in each thing. Well, here's why that doesn't work in today's NFL. Or here's why it can get covered up in today's NFL. Everybody has a really big corner. Everybody's got a really fast corner. So the cornerback room has evolved in the same way that the wide receiver room has evolved. You see this all the time in football. You look at the early aughts. Big wide receivers were all the rage. Terrell Owens, all of these massive guys. And because cornerbacks were small and fast to cover the small, fast wide receivers of the 90s. And the 90s had some monster wide receivers too, I get it. But not like Calvin Johnson. So, the big wide receiver dominates the NFL until some 8th grader who's really big and pretty agile decides not to play wide receiver, decides to play cornerback, makes his way through the college or the high school level, gets recruited to college. Now all of a sudden you have a freakazoid cornerback who can cover Terrell Owens and Calvin Johnson, etc. So then all those absolute monsters make it to the NFL. All of a sudden, what's in vogue? Really fast wide receivers. That happens all the time. Well, why is it different now? Why don't you want all of this different, a big guy, a possession guy, a fast guy, all of this stuff? Because the cornerback room mirrors the wide receiver room. So you have now 4-2-1 Xavier Worthy, 4-2-7 Hollywood Brown, 4-2-4? Is that 4? We'll just say 4-3. And you have 4.3 Tyquan Thornton. Does anybody have 3 corners that can do that? No. So now you put all of them on the field, somebody's getting open. You are hitting a mismatch because the Bears have their main cornerback is 6'2", 207, but he runs a 4.5. Now he has to cover one of these guys. Right? So anyway, I think that is a little bit short-sighted. It's incredibly frustrating that Kansas City has used its resources on receivers with redundant skill sets. None of them can win a contested catch or beat physical coverage. No one has 4 cornerbacks who can run physical coverage. They all require role catering or scheme to create chances for them. None of them can do it for themselves. This is not because they're fast guys. This is because, like I've said on this channel since the draft, or at least since free agency, the Kansas City Chiefs have a room full of number 2 wide receivers. Rashee Rice is a really good number 2 wide receiver. Hollywood Brown has been in this league a really good number 2 wide receiver. Xavier Worthy probably doesn't have the stuff to be a number 1 wide receiver. It's not because most of them are fast. It's certainly not because Tyquan Thornton and Rashee Rice have the same skill set. It's because they're just not elite wide receivers. That's it. And the Kansas City Chiefs have not been in position to get, and I know they drafted Sky Moore over Calvin Johnson II. They have not been in position to get the elite of the elite for a long time. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. So why are the Chiefs even trying? Why don't they simply return to the approach that gave Mahomes his second MVP award, as he became the first quarterback in NFL history to lead the league in passing yards and win a Lombardi trophy without Hill in 2022? Move the sticks with quick, efficient, intermediate passes. Take time off the clock and keep the defense fresh, so it can help, win games. Who cares? What am I at here? Who cares if the team ever brings back Hill's production? Kansas City has been better without him, as long as it has taken the approach that best fits it. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I did not do the research for what I'm about to say, for what's about to come out of my mouth, but I'm willing to bet that if you dug through the archives at Arrowhead Pride, you would find articles from John Dixon saying the Chiefs need to get back to having an explosive offense. You would get to articles about John Dixon saying the Chiefs are losing games or games are close because they're playing dink and dunk offense. The issue is, I think you try to do the game, you try to run the game you want to run. I just dropped my pen. I'm going to need it in a second. The dink and dunk stuff did work for the Chiefs in 2022. By 2023, it was a lot rougher. And by 2024, boy, did it look bad at times. You want to run that out there for the fourth consecutive season? Okay. But I guarantee there will be Arrowhead Pride articles about how the offense has regressed to dink and dunk fashion. Now, let's look at some things. This is going to be difficult, I know, but this is the only way I can keep everything in frame. Here's last year for Patrick Mahomes. Here's 2025. When you look at this, you were looking at a quarterback who has a touchdown percentage of half a point better, 4.5 to 5.0. These numbers are just too small. It's going to be rough. You're looking at a quarterback, pardon me, who has a success percentage within the range, right? Less than a point difference there. You're looking at a quarterback who has a yards per attempt that is a half a yard higher at 7.3 versus last year's 6.8. You're looking at a quarterback who has an average yards in air of passes of 0.7 yards higher. Yards per completion, 1.3 yard higher this season than last year. Yards per game, 17 more yards per game than last year. Rating is higher than last year. QBR, higher than last year. All of these numbers are higher than last year. Touchdown percentage higher than last year. I had that already. On pace to have, I believe, 4,400 yards as opposed to 3,900 yards. You're looking at a quarterback whose game looks much healthier. One thing kind of underrated here that we're not seeing, that we're not talking about, is this number right here. Through 10 games, he has taken 20 sacks. He took 36 all of last year. This is including the fact that he took the last week off. He's on pace to take 32 sacks this season. Basically the same number as last year. The thing that I have seen pop up in his game, and I went back and checked other games because I talked about this on the game review for the Broncos game. And it was there, but it was not as egregious as against the Broncos. There are times when Patrick Mahomes looks afraid to leave the pocket. When Mahomes leaves the pocket, now earlier in the season, remember, he was running to daylight. He was running like it was going out of style. Somewhere along the way, he cut back on that. When you run and you're Patrick Mahomes, one, you can run a little bit. So you could get the first down that way. Number two, when you break the pocket, there are players on the defense who come up to stop you. This opens guys up. Number three, when you're Patrick Mahomes and you run out of the pocket, you're changing the angle on throws, and that's difficult for a cornerback. Somewhere along the line, and here's the thing, so somewhere along the line, Patrick Mahomes has gotten away from that this season, or has started to tail off of it. Against the Broncos, it was bad. It's possible. So the NFL is very secretive, right? If you receive any kind of treatment, you have to report it. But that's if you're in the facility. What if we all know that it's November, and November means Patrick Mahomes has an ankle thing every year? Is it possible that part of the regression of the last couple weeks is that he's got some coinky-dink with his ankle? Ankles suck. Ankles suck. Right? There's so many bones in there, and they're just kind of rubbing together. There's no space for them, all this stuff. I think it's possible that he has just something small. Minor sprain. Doesn't affect the way he moves, but it might affect the way he plans. It might affect the way that he does this or that. If you've ever had ankle problems, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's just a dull throb that makes your foot feel like it's dead. I think it's possible that's what we're looking at. And I'm not here to put conjecture out there, but I think if we're trying to understand what's going on, we have to take in the full picture. And it's not the deep passing game that is ruining things. It's the fact that Mahomes, the past couple of weeks, hasn't been Mahomes. He does not look dynamic the way that he had earlier in the season, or for a stretch of the season. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.